Kael was covered in anti-corrosion gel up to his elbows. He was certain that if he remained in this small, confined space for another week, his own body would slowly turn to metal like the ship's cargo hold. His ship's name, the Wrench, was far too ironic for a repair cutter. Normally, he would patch the rogue fusion leaks of large transport ships or reset the cargo hold locking systems. He wasn't an explorer or a fighter pilot. He was the galaxy's plumber. His console suddenly went crazy after 3 days of unnerving silence. The signal was weak, barely a whisper, coming from an abandoned habitat just outside the orbit of the gas giant's frozen moon. Kael frowned. Deep space etiquette dictated that if a habitat remained silent for more than a cycle, its problems were fatal and possibly contagious. But the pay for repairing scrap metal was more substantial than fixing the ever-glitching cargo ships. He decided to take the risk. "Well, the Wrench," Kael muttered, donning his environmental helmet. "Looks like we're in for a bit of a rusty adventure. Hopefully, cash payment awaits us instead of evidence that a space ghost once lived there." He began a slow, silent burn. The journey was long and nerve-wracking. Along the way, he monitored the gravitational fluctuations around the moon where the habitat was located. These fluctuations weren't normal. They were too sharp, too irregular. Kael remembered a note he'd found while scanning old system updates: unstable quantum field, high-risk area for any approaching repair ships. Finally, the habitat came into view. As he'd expected, it was a ruin. A swirling collection of aging steel piers, fused alloys, and broken solar panels. The habitat was supposed to have been abandoned for nearly a century. Kael carefully docked his small repair cutter. As he entered, his ship's automated diagnostics indicated that the habitat's internal temperature was stable, but its internal air pressure was only barely holding. Kael passed through the airlock and stepped into the interior. Everything was empty and dusty, but at the end of a corridor stood a door that had remained intact, as if time had forgotten it. He used the magnetic field key to open the door, and the sight he found inside stopped him in his tracks. The room was not empty. At the center of the room was a smooth, obsidian-like structure. Under the dim light, it pulsed with a slow, irregular rhythm. It was something Kael had previously seen only in forbidden databanks, a Zydusian time well. The Zydusians were a civilization that had tampered with the fundamental constants of the universe, capable of creating localized temporal distortions. What was this well doing here, in this forgotten corner? And more importantly, why was it still active? Kael returned to the instrument panel and pulled out a multispectral sensor probe. He carefully extended it toward the obsidian structure. "It's definitely not a broken air filter," he murmured. "It's a temporal anomaly generator. It's pure luck." The time well was humming, threatening to warp the local timeline just for spite. Kael was trying to redirect a dangerously fluctuating energy spike originating from the well's core. Precise adjustments were required, and his hands were covered in grease. At that crucial moment, the expensive laser key, his favorite tool, slipped from his greasy palm. The key struck a small, unmarked Zydusian conductor at the bottom of the time well. A sharp, high-pitched whine sounded, and Kael felt the atmosphere around him solidify. Everything spiraled into a moment of panic. Kael glanced at his ship's chronometer display. It reflected the time well's output, 3 o'clock. Then, 2:59. 2:58. Kael's internal systems were running in reverse. "Oh my God, are you serious?" he cried in a panicked voice. He hurried to grab the laser key, which felt like it was being pulled away from him in time. "Am I counting down my 3 minutes of life? This is too much drama for a delivery mission. I'll have to get paid back." His body reacted to the reversal of time. His stomach seemed to be trying to recall a meal he'd eaten years ago, and his brain was being forced to forget a news story he'd just read. Summoning all his strength, Kael managed to reset the energy. When he finally stabilized the power surge, the stopwatch returned to the correct time. Kael stood, dazed by the neurological impact he'd received, 3 minutes of his life stolen. "Phew," he breathed, trying to clear his dizziness. "Now I know I should always keep my coffee in a sealed mug when working with Zydusian technology." The relief that settled over his face was intense and genuine. The danger was over. At least, he thought so. In Kael's moment of inattention, An accidental burst of energy from the time well had released a distorted temporal signature that ripped through the silence of space. It was an amateur signal, like a 3-minute reverse, but far away, light years away, someone. As Kael struggled to shake off the neurological stupor induced by the time well, thousands of light years away, in a dark corner of space, the cost of this amateurish mistake was already being counted. Elara stood on the command bridge. Her ship, the Chrono-Warden, was a monster of dense armor plating and hidden weaponry, a hunter ship designed to hunt temporal fugitives. Elara herself was a hunter, a high-ranking, fugitive time mercenary who tracked down rare and dangerous technologies for high-priced clients. Her face was illuminated by the cold light of the data streams. She frowned. Her sensors had picked up an unprecedented surge of a Zydusian time well signature. The signature was powerful, but the pattern of its explosion was scattered and chaotic. "It looks like someone pressed the temporal alarm clock button," she said to Zydus, the tactical officer who was shining a massive energy rifle. Zydus merely grunted. Elara continued, "Given the chaotic nature of this energy discharge, the person working on the well must be a novice scrap collector. But the activation signal is definitive. It's time to collect our reward. And we must remind that scrap collector that tinkering with Zydusian technology is a very expensive career choice." Elara initiated the ship's jump sequence with a flick of her finger. The Chrono-Warden blasted out of hyperspace, momentarily opening a rift in space. Its arrival was marked by an intense crackle of static electricity and a loud shockwave. The ship positioned itself perfectly between the wrench and open space, orbiting Kael's gas giant moon. Its size compared to Kael's modest repair cutter, it was like a dinosaur looking at a toothbrush. Just as Kael had recovered and was attempting to put the Zydusian time well back into sleep mode, his ship's external sensors went on red alert. A warning appeared on the screen, written in all capital letters: "Danger immediate. High-energy surveillance locked." Then, he felt a sharp, vibrating impact on the ship's hull. It didn't sound, but it felt like pure energy. A second later, a focused energy beam exploded in the alloy of the abandoned habitat just off the wrench. The beam wasn't lethal, but it was enough to vibrate the ship's weak shields and throw Kael into the console. The smell of scorched metal wafted from the habitat's walls. Kael pulled himself up with a groan. "That was completely unnecessary," he whimpered, checking the integrity of his ship's life support. "They could have just politely sent a call. I always respond to polite calls, especially before they start vaporizing the structure around my head." The next warning transmission from Elara's ship was brutal, in a cold, synthesized voice. "Surrender the Zydusian artifact and your ship immediately, or face full systemic incineration." Kael looked at the trembling, highly volatile time well, then at the massive silhouette of the Chrono-Warden, completely blocking his escape route. "Excellent," Kael grumbled. "If I'm going to be used as a test pilot for a time paradox, they should at least offer dental insurance." He was trapped. The habitat structure was too weak for a conventional chase. He had only one impossible option: escape directly through the anomaly, despite the risk of chronal shift. He had to devise a plan to escape. Kael scrambled back to the cockpit of the wrench, the heavy, synthesized voice of the mercenary Elara still echoing in his comms unit. "Surrender the Zydusian artifact and your vessel immediately, or face full systemic incineration." He looked out the viewport at the massive, blocky silhouette of the Chrono-Warden, which looked less like a ship and more like a very aggressive, heavily armored refrigerator. "Well," Kael muttered, running a diagnostic on his non-existent shields. "This is awkward. I'm afraid I can't hand over the artifact. It's not mine, and I haven't finished its paperwork yet. Also, I have a strict policy against being systemically incinerated before breakfast." He knew the mercenary was serious. He was pinned. The habitat was too fragile for a prolonged firefight, and the wrench was built for finesse, not confrontation. He glanced at the volatile, shimmering Zydusian time well behind him. It was a terrifying, unpredictable maw of temporal distortion, threatening to unravel his timeline like a loose thread on a cheap sweater. But it was the only direction the Chrono-Warden wasn't expecting him to go. Kael realizes his only viable path to escape the sector and avoid capture is to navigate directly through the destabilized time well itself, risking catastrophic chronal shear. "Right," Kael sighed, buckling himself in. It's either be vaporized by an orbital gun or risk becoming my own grandpa. I'll take the time travel lottery. He slammed his hand down on the manual override console, bypassing 4 layers of safety protocols that his father had personally programmed. He began rerouting all main power, fusion core, life support, even the rudimentary coffee maker, into the drive capacitor. Using his advanced engineering knowledge, Kael stabilizes the time well just long enough to generate a controlled, high-velocity temporal slingshot maneuver. He wasn't trying to fix the anomaly, which would take weeks and a dedicated engineering team. He was treating it like a broken engine, using its instability as a highly volatile, directional force. He interfaced the wrench's humble sublight thrusters with the time well's exposed energy core. "We're not jumping, we're folding," he muttered to the ship, the voice of the Chrono Warden becoming distant static. "I'm going to use the well's chaotic energy to slingshot us out of this gravity well, like skipping a pebble across spacetime. Hold together, you beautiful, broken pile of history, or we'll both end up as dust in the Mesozoic." The time well roared. The obsidian structure began to glow a furious, contained orange, and the light flooded the wrench's cockpit. Kael executed the final command. The ship was instantly plunged into a maelstrom of sensory input. It wasn't the clean, sterile jump of hyperspace. It was a violent, crushing maelstrom that felt like his consciousness was being stretched thin across a cosmic drum skin. The temporal slingshot accelerated the wrench to an impossible fraction of light speed while simultaneously shoving it forward in time by a barely perceptible fraction of a second. It was nonlinear acceleration, a sensory overload that compressed hours of flight into a violent, sickening blink. When the ship finally stabilized, the horrific noise ceased. Kael was miles away from the moon, deep in the relative quiet of the void, shaking violently but miraculously intact. He was alive, though he felt about 82 years older than he should. Kael successfully escapes the moon's orbit, pursued relentlessly by Elara. On the Chrono Warden, Elara's tactical officer, Zydus, slammed his heavy, armored fist against the console. "Target is gone." Chronal interference signature spiked off the charts. That amateur used the well as a drive. Where did he go? Elara was calm, but her eyes held a dangerous fire. He used the well, Zydus. Clever, messy, and highly traceable. Initiate passive tracking. His jump left an irreversible chronal wake on his sublight engine signature. He bought himself some time, but he can't outrun time itself. Kael looked at his main engine diagnostic. The time well's chaotic energy had fused several conduits and left an indelible stain on his drive signature, a persistent, low-frequency ripple in spacetime that only a specialist like Elara could detect. But his ship systems are permanently marked by the temporal jump, making future detection by the mercenary significantly easier. He was a moving target, now officially a fugitive with a permanent, glowing, "Follow me" sign etched onto his ship. He sighed, running a hand over his face. "Well, I guess I'm canceling my deep space insurance plan." They'd never believe this claim. Kael set a course for the nearest neutral sector, a thin, predatory smile forming. This little chase just got interesting. Looks like this engineer just signed his own galactic travel itinerary. Kael spent the next few hours in the dizzying silence of the void, nursing a splitting headache that felt like 2 timelines were fighting for control inside his skull. The emergency stabilizer gels had stopped the wrench from tearing itself apart, but they couldn't undo the systemic damage of the temporal slingshot. He was alive, which was the highest compliment he could pay his own engineering. He activated the full-spectrum diagnostic. The readings confirmed the grim news Elara had promised. His main drive signature now carried an indelible scar. It wasn't just an energy trace, it was a rhythmic distortion in the fabric of spacetime itself, a low-frequency hum detectable across vast distances. His ship systems now possess a permanent, traceable temporal wake, making any future stealth impossible against Elara's advanced scanners. "Fantastic," Kael sighed, running a hand through his already messy hair. "I didn't just get away. I advertised my escape route in neon lights and left behind a trail of breadcrumbs made of pure chronology. I'm the universe's most wanted piece of faulty hardware." The immediate danger wasn't Elara, who was still cycles away. It was his own ship. The uneven stress of the temporal fold had caused minute-age differentials in the ship's vital components. The fusion core was aging at a faster rate than the life support unit, meaning he needed a major external repair, specifically a temporal capacitor bypass, TCB, before the chronological instability led to a spectacular, self-destructive disassembly. Kael realizes he must find a black market port capable of installing the complex TCB unit to mask his signature, but any logical stop will be anticipated by Elara. He pulled up a holographic projection of the local sector. The nearest well-supplied repair hub was Port Epsilon, a clean, heavily regulated station. Too logical. Elara would have a trap waiting there, probably disguised as a customs inspection or, worse, a friendly greeting. He needed somewhere messy, somewhere loud, somewhere run by people who didn't care about chronal wakes as long as the credits were green. Meanwhile, aboard the Chrono Warden, Elara was tracking the now constant chronal ripple left by the wrench. Her analysis was cold and clinical. The amateur engineer must stabilize his drive systems immediately to survive, she calculated. That requires a TCB. Where would an engineer with limited resources but specialized knowledge go? She eliminated the high-profile ports. The target, she deduced, would head for a place with low security and high parts availability. Most likely the G-47 asteroid network, known for its bustling black market workshops and corrupt port authorities. It was a perfect choke point. Elara smiled, a slow, predatory movement. He thinks he's being clever by avoiding the main roads, Zydus. He's forgetting that engineers, even salvage ones, are creatures of habit. They always go where the parts are cheapest. She deployed a small, fast, stealth craft, the pursuit drone Stiletto, to lie in wait at a crucial navigation beacon near the G-47 network, programming it to emit a focused, short-burst gravity net field upon confirming the wrench's signature. The trap was set. Kael, however, was already thinking several steps ahead, leveraging his years of dealing with galactic bureaucracy. Port Epsilon is too obvious. G-47 is the obvious secondary choice, too logical for a fugitive who just blew up a time well, he mused. I need chaos. He zoomed out on the map, his eyes settling on a notoriously avoided sector far beyond the G-47 network, a region of highly concentrated space debris and defunct mining vessels. He set a new course for the Junkyard, an immense, illegally constructed space habitat formed from fused salvage and held in a slow, erratic rotation near the edge of the system's habitable zone. It was a sprawling, lawless mess of interconnected ship hulls and flickering neon signs, a place where gravity was optional and the air was recycled regret. Kael sets a reckless course for the Junkyard, a massive, unregulated space station built from salvage, betting on its chaotic nature to mask his arrival from Elara's network. It's loud, it's disorganized, and the nearest thing to a law enforcement official is a malfunctioning security bot, Kael declared to the empty cockpit. Elara won't expect an engineer to willingly enter a situation that requires more repairs. It's beautiful. As the wrench approached the Junkyard, the sensor readout turned into a riot of static, conflicting electromagnetic fields, and spurious ghost readings. Kael executed a final, evasive maneuver, diving into the swirling mass of space trash and illegal docking bays. He had traded immediate incineration for probable asphyxiation and a lifetime of dealing with shady mechanics. But for now, he was safe, nestled deep within the galaxy's largest, noisiest pile of obsolete junk. After immersing himself in the chaotic atmosphere of the Junkyard, Kael parked the wrench in a barely breathing repair bay. The outside of the habitat was a mix of warped space debris and flashing neon billboards. Inside, the situation was even worse. The air was thick with old hydraulic fluid and malware. It was the galaxy's forgotten, irreparable junkyard. Landing on the illegal space station known as the Junkyard, Kael hoped its chaotic environment would be protected from Elara's advanced scans. Kael opened his ship's hatch and checked the fusion core readings. The problem was worse than he'd anticipated. The temporal jump had created micro-rifts in the ship's components, causing them to age at different rates. The ship could begin self-disassembly within 2 weeks. The TCB, temporal capacitor bypass, was no longer a luxury, but a necessity. As he closed the hatch, he saw a rusted, 10-foot-tall Security Class 4 droid standing in the doorway. The droid's optics were blinking, and one arm was swinging at the wrong angle. Excuse me. Repair fee is 400 credits. Or, burn it to ensure compliance. Excuse me, my friend, Kael said, pulling out a patch cord. I'll give you 50 credits and realign your arm. That pulsating motion is slowing you down. Kael was using all the advantages of being a junkyard mechanic. The best security was always broken security. The instantaneous disappearance of Kael's ship's chronograph was only a minor inconvenience for Elara in the Chrono Warden. Elara detected that the Stiletto drone, waiting in the G-47 asteroid network, had failed. It escaped Area 47, he said, spinning a projection showing the wrench's course. Clever. He knew he wouldn't fall into a secondary trap. So he's not just a scrap collector, he's a strategic fugitive. Elara adjusted the ship's tracking system, the passive chronal tracker, to filter out junk coil's excessive electromagnetic noise. It'll take more than a cycle to get there, she said. But our drones won't wait that long. Junk coil can't hide stray energy, even in organized chaos. Zydus, activate 4 Spectre scout ships. Let them sneak in. The target is a worried engineer looking for a TCB. Elara deploys 4 Spectre-class stealth scout drones to track Kael, ordering them to slowly scan junk coil's complex infrastructure. Meanwhile, Kael has located a local Klaxian scrapyard technician named Gutter Rat, armed with 12 arms and 3 optics. Gutter Rat stood behind a counter illuminated in grimy, neon green light. The counter was filled with all manner of illicit and volatile technology, including the TCB unit Kael was searching for. TCB. Gutter Rat hissed, using all 6 of his arms simultaneously to repair a cargo drive rod. To clean up an old Zydusian trace? That's the hottest thing on the market, man. Besides, there's a very rich mercenary who started hunting for the son of a bitch who hijacked our cargo. Price tag: 7,000 credits. Cash: 7,000. Kael raised his eyebrows in shock. That's all I've saved. Besides, I wasn't the one who hijacked your cargo. I'm just a mechanic. I'm a victim of a paradox. Gutter Rat fixed his gaze on Kael. As far as I'm concerned, you're either the one who stole the cargo or the mercenary who's tracking the thief is looking for. Either way, the price is 7,000. Or, if you prefer, you can watch your ship disintegrate due to accelerated aging. Kael was stuck. Paying that amount would leave him completely broke, but without the TCB, it was only a matter of time before Elara found him. Kael would have to pay his entire life for the TCB, leaving him penniless but with his only chance at survival. Okay, Kael said, finally giving up. Give me that damn TCB. And if it has a security tag, I know it'll take exactly 3 minutes to remove it. Let's save time, shall we? In that moment, Kael was no longer just a repairman. He was a fugitive, gambling on his own survival, acting on his speed and intelligence. Kael's hand trembled as he approved the transfer of 7,000 credits, representing his entire life savings, to the Klaxian repairman Gutter Rat. It was a repair engineer's reward for 10 years of hard labor and dangerous tasks. Now it had been spent on a piece of illegal, yet vital, hardware. Here's your money, Kael said, trying to keep the anger out of his voice. As I said, TCB. It's functional, and it shouldn't have any labels on it that invite me to chat with the Space Navy. All 3 of Gutter Rat's optics twitched simultaneously. The Klaxian quickly executed a complex encryption chain that divided Kael's funds into 3 separate electronic wallets. This TCB has its own secrets, my friend. But it doesn't contain an illegal tracker. It's simply illegally produced and illegally sold. That's exactly what you need. He handed Kael the TCB, a glowing titanium cylinder hidden within a tangle of junk wires. Kael retrieved the TCB and immediately returned to his ship, planning his next move. However, even paying the price didn't make Gutter Rat completely trustworthy. Kael immediately returned to the wrench with the temporal capacitor bypass, TCB, in hand. He had only a few hours to integrate the TCB directly into the fusion core. Meanwhile, despite the station's chaotic signal jam, Elara's 4 Spectre reconnaissance drones maintained an organized scanning pattern deep within the junk coil. The drones scanned the station itself for radioactivity spikes and overheating electronics, aiming to detect the small but noticeable energy leaks that would inevitably occur during a TCB operation. Kael began his repairs. Removing the main diffusers and installing the TCB required precision, like a surgeon working under a microscope. A momentary error could not only cause his ship to disintegrate but also send out a wave of temporal instability, handing Elara her location on a silver platter. "Come on, parts with different aging rates," he muttered as he soldered the thin optical cables. "I hope you all don't retire at the same time." Just then, a small red light lit up behind Gutter Rat's counter. The moment Gutter Rat had received Kael's money, he had made his next inevitable move. He had sent a coded, anonymous signal to Elara's crew, informing them that Kael was looking for the TCB. This wasn't so much to help the mercenary find the cargo thief as it was to protect his own business. He didn't want a fugitive causing long-term problems on the station. Gutter Rat notified Elara's team via encrypted signal that Kael was looking for a TCB, thus preventing further chaos on the station. In the Chrono Warden command center, Elara monitored the data stream from the Spectre drones. While the drones were still scanning the chaos of the junk coil, Gutter Rat's signal dropped directly into Elara's private communication channel. The message was brief. "The junk engineer has acquired the TCB. He's probably installing it right now." Elara didn't display the anger Kael had expected. Instead, a satisfied smile appeared on her face. "That's it," she said. "He's an engineer. Engineers always repair the ship. Now that he's cleared that trail, he'll guide us to the next logical stop." Elara knew that Kael's first move after installing the TCB would be to a safe, regulated area where he could make a high-speed hyperspace jump. His goal wasn't just to mask the signature, but to quickly escape this chaos. "Zydus," Elara commanded. "Withdraw the Spectres from junk coil. We won't risk our source. The TCB will erase the trace, but it will install a delay residue in the ship's engines. Predict our destination's route, the Meridian Station. Clean air, organized docks, and most importantly, fast escape routes. We'll reach Meridian before he gets there." Elara, predicting Kael's next stop, heads there and sets a temporary shield trap along his destination. When Kael finally completed the TCB installation, his ship's chronometer began to tick steadily. The terrifying age difference in the main diffuser had stopped. He had succeeded. But his pockets were empty, and there was a restlessness in his heart. Even the junk coil's environment was too chaotic for Elara to remain silent for this long. Silence is dangerous, Kael thought, turning to his terminal and starting to calculate a route for his next jump. I expected Elara to be waiting for me at Port Epsilon, G47, or even here. So where now? His instinct told him to go to Meridian Station, the logical next stop, offering a safe, orderly, and rapid exit. But as with his first escape, Kael knew that logic was one step behind Elara. Logic leads an engineer to the right place, a hunter to the right trap. Kael deleted the Meridian route from his terminal. His eyes focused on a completely unrelated, far more distant and dangerous point on the galactic map, the Shifting. The Shifting Nebula was less a cloud of gas and dust and more a vast, multi-dimensional headache. It was the galactic equivalent of a forgotten construction site, riddled with hyperdimensional rifts, stochastic energy fields, and pockets of space where the laws of physics decided to take a lunch break. Kael's decision to enter the nebula was a leap of faith into pure chaos, betting that its inherent instability would hide his own manufactured instability. As the wrench plunged into the swirling colors and electromagnetic noise, the air in the cockpit grew thick with tension. The temporal capacitor bypass, TCB, Kael had installed performed admirably, masking his ship's chrono signature completely. But the TCB couldn't mask the nebula itself. Every moment was a struggle against navigational entropy. The star chart dissolved into flickering green static, and the ship's internal gyroscopes spun wildly. "This is not navigation," Kael gritted out, manually wrestling the controls. "This is pinball with a high probability of temporal disintegration." He relied entirely on the older, analog magnetic coil sensors, threading the needle between collapsing pocket dimensions and hyperspeed plasma streams. His target was the rumored ancient repair station, a supposed haven for derelict ships. After what felt like 3 cycles of non-stop, gut-wrenching maneuvering, Kael found his destination. It wasn't a station run by mechanics, but a massive, dormant Zydusian repair beacon. The beacon was a technological marvel, a gargantuan, geometric structure that had fallen silent millennia ago, held in place by its own powerful, decaying gravitational field. The beacon's unique property was its field of temporal stillness, a bubble where chronal ripples died instantly, making it the perfect final hideout for Kael. Meanwhile, the Chrono Warden emerged from a hyperspace jump with cold, efficient precision. They were at the Meridian Station, the high-security port Elara had calculated Kael would run to for a clean getaway. They found nothing. No chronal wake, no docking signature, no frantic salvage engineer. Elara stood rigid at the command console, her voice dangerously level. Zero confirmation. Zydus? Zydus, her tactical officer, checked the auxiliary scanners, a knot of stress forming on his brow. Negative, Captain. The TCB scrubbed his signature cleanly. He didn't come here. He played the long game. He calculated our logic. A muscle twitched in Elara's jaw. She hated being predictable, especially to an amateur engineer. The cost of missing him here was immense, but the cost of losing him was catastrophic for her client. He went off-map, Elara deduced, the predatory fire returning to her eyes. He chose chaos over convention. He chose the Shifting Nebula. Zydus gasped. Captain, the nebula? Navigation is impossible in there. It would take a full fleet to scan, and the temporal anomalies would tear the Chrono Warden apart. Then we find a way to scan the entrance, Elara commanded, her voice rising with lethal finality. He is in there, hiding in the chronal noise. We will not enter, but we will blockade every possible exit point. Deploy 3 Spectre drones to maintain a sensor picket along the nebula's boundary. And Zydus, initiate the galactic bounty alert. Use the Zydusian artifact's base signature. Make the reward high enough to make even the greediest guilds look for him. This is no longer a localized hunt. Turn him into the galaxy's most profitable ghost. Kael finally navigated the wrench into the beacon's enormous docking bay, the last of his fuel nearly depleted. He secured the ship and stepped out, breathing a sigh of exhausted relief. He had escaped, but now he was stranded inside a technological tomb miles from civilization, with the entire galaxy soon to be searching for him. Kael docked his ship, the Wrench, at the massive, silent dock of the Zydusian repair beacon. The air was filled with the scent of emptiness trapped for millions of years, cold, metallic, and faintly ozonized. The beacon itself was a complex, geometric structure, its mere existence creating a field of temporal stasis in the surrounding spacetime. It was a haven where Kael's chronal signature instantly reset, a sanctuary where absolute silence reigned even for Elara's advanced scans. Luck, Kael whispered as he made his way down a corridor lined with Zydusian script. Or genius. If I even made a sandwich right now, my thermal signature would fade faster than light. But this stasis was a trap. Kael had run out of fuel. To restore power to the ship, he needed to access the beacon's main reactor, but that would mean reviving an unknown power source that had been dormant for millennia. Kael found the main control room. At its center was a large hollow projection table, now covered in dust, designed for repairs and diagnostics. He cleared the table and connected the wrench's systems to the lighthouse's terminal. His goal wasn't just to refuel, but also to understand why Elara was so persistently pursuing Zydusian Timewell technology. Kael began deciphering the lighthouse's data logs. At the outer edge of the slippery nebula, Elara's prediction had been correct. Kael was in the slippery nebula. On the Chrono Warden's command bridge, Elara turned to Zydus with a calmness that belied her anger. He jumped Meridian. An unexpected display of intelligence. That piece of junk threw itself into the chaos. But that means he has an exit strategy. Elara carefully marked the area around the slippery nebula on the tactical map. We can't enter the nebula, but we can control the exits. Activate 2 heavy Sentinel drones. Have them patrol all potential hyperspace routes leading into the nebula. Also, issue a galactic bounty alert. Double the bounty. Make Kael the most expensive ghost in the galaxy. I'm looking for not only hunters, but any traveler who might see him. Elara doubles Kael's bounty and deploys 2 heavy Sentinel drones around the slippery nebula, aiming to completely eliminate Kael's chances of escape. Meanwhile, Kael made a horrifying discovery in the Lantern's records. The Obsidian Timewell wasn't just a piece of technology. It was part of what the Zydusians called a backup point, the last hope of a vanishing civilization fleeing a galactic war. The time well was a crypto storage unit designed not only to manipulate time, but also to safely store critical information in a temporal loop for centuries. Kael realized that what he had stolen from the well was not just an artifact, but also a secret formula the Zydusians had hidden from a civilization that called itself the Chrono-Thieves, a civilization that wielded time as a weapon. Elara's client wanted to seize this Zydusian technology and use it for his own ruthless time manipulation purposes. Kael discovered that the time well contained a vital secret that a vanished civilization had hidden from the enemies they called the Chrono-Thieves. Kael looked back in horror. The metal box he had retrieved upon boarding was now no mere piece of scrap metal, but a key that could ignite a galactic war. Pushing aside his fatigue, Kael began to restore full power to the lantern's core reactor. "Well, Kael," he said to himself, wiping his brow, "you're not a mechanic anymore. You're a cargo ship. And the value of this cargo isn't just 7,000 credits." As the lantern loaded fuel and critical systems data, Kael set his course. The only way out of the slippery nebula was to make a risky one-way jump into the unknown regions, directly opposite the checkpoints Elara had set for him. No longer an engineer, but a hero, Kael prepared for one last leap into the unknown regions, resigning his fate to uncertainty.